Well, you know what's going to walk around on me? I went to that John Abbott exhibit at Telfair. And sent him a note and told him how much I owed him. He changed completely. All right, can we call the meeting to order? Everybody, it's 10 o'clock. Let's try and get it rolling. It's nice to have everyone here today. I apologize that you're going to have to suffer me as your chair today of the meeting. Howard is on a cruise, on his way to Europe, I believe. So, anyway, I'm certain I will not do as well as he, but I will try to do the best I can. All right, so we'll call the meeting to order, and why don't we get started with the roll call?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Chairman French is excused. Chair Mr. Broker.
Here.
Mr. Ellis.
I think Ellis just left. He had
a death in the congregation.
Mr. O'Halloran.
Here.
Mr. Doran.
Here.
Ms. Odell.
She's on the road. She's on the way here. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Mr. Jones.
I'm present.
Mr. Lakakis.
Yeah.
Mr. Mandel.
Here.
Thank you.
Do we need to move to excuse Chester?
To Reverend Ellis,
And
Commissioner Odell, and Mr. French.
Well, not Odell, she's on the way.
She's on the way.
She's on her way, but why don't we go and excuse her, and then if she shows up,
Okay, so moved.
we'll have it covered.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right. The next item we have is the approval of the minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Do I hear a second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we will now move into the motion. I'm sorry. Go down.
Oh, we're voting on the...
Yes, sir.
Is that us? And Beverly, I will make my second with the caveat that there are still things I'm quoted as saying in the minutes, but I don't recognize.
Okay. If you want to point any of them out.
Well, none of them are particularly problematic, other than it's just a very strange transcription.
Okay. Thank you.
So I think we're all voting, but nothing is appearing.
It's not going to appear to everybody. You just put me in as a yes.
Okay.
Assuming mine's going yes, because I motion. Shouldn't say. There we go.
So since it doesn't appear to be appearing on the screen, there's been a motion and a second that the minutes be accepted. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are approved. We'll now move into the public hearing.
Not according to this.
Oh, there we go. All right. So we will have the first public hearing on the budget for the Chatham Area Transit Authority for the coming year. Ladies and gentlemen, this hearing is being held in compliance with state law relative to Chatham Area Transit Authority's proposed fiscal year 2019 budget. Information packets showing the proposed budget are available at the front entrance. A list is being passed around asking for the names and addresses of those present. The purpose of this is to document that public input was solicited for future audit purposes. First, the first reading of the fiscal year 2019 proposed operating and capital budget. The Chief Financial Officer, you want to provide us with a summary of the budget?
So can I change that screen? I don't think I can shoot it.
Yes, ma'am.
You may.
Are you ready for the PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm. down if everybody can see.
It should show the
A little
lights.
dim.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is the first reading of our FY19 budget. We are right in the middle of our calendar, so we have steps after this that include additional public meetings and second reading and adoption at our next board meeting. But for a summary, our FY18 financial objectives of an increase in millage, agency fees to cover cost, and debt service budgeted for the first time have all been achieved, and we're set by the end of the year to be on target to begin to build a cash reserve. This year, our internal budget development process was the same as in previous years. The managers and directors made requests. Meetings were discussed to review it. It was revised and reviewed by the CEO, and we have held 2 board budget workshops to discuss the budget.
I hesitate to interrupt you, but I just wanted to give a pat on the back to everybody involved. Those first 5 items made that a great year.
It is going to be a substantial improvement. When we roll through the end of the operating cycle, our cash position will be $3 million better, and our financial statement position will be over $5 million.
With that and getting to net 45-day payments, starting to build some reserve, getting the millage rate increase, all of those things have just been terrific. So
Thank you.
Thank you for all your effort, everybody's efforts on that.
Organization-wide effort and accomplishment. So with this year's budget, our assumptions are that we'll ask for no millage increase. It will remain at 1.15. The tax digest growth in the budget is estimated at 3%. It's a little more conservative than what the county is estimating. I like to be conservative on our revenues and more aggressive on the cost, so we stay right side up on our bottom line. Our wage increases will be up to 3%, and the inflation factors range from 1 to 10 depending on the category of expense. Staff is presenting a balanced budget with revenues of $25,919,792, expenditures at $24,919, and with the debt service, we have a balanced budget and expect to end the position next year even. For our capital budget, the details on the revenues and the expenditures, our agency revenue is up because of a planned expansion of the city shuttle, and also our paratransit revenues stayed the same. There's a demand increase, but a productivity decrease in revenue. It takes effect there. For our expenditures, the material main additions are costs for our system redesign, possible police force coverage at our buildings and on the system, and a large amount of money earmarked for staff development and training. So for our capital budget, this is a program of projects based on current grants executed. We anticipate fleet replacement, ferry vessel and dock rehab, passenger amenities programs, and maintenance equipment that will add another $9 million to our bottom line next year. So the next steps are to incorporate any information from the transit district expansion. We've been in contact with the county and we're waiting for some guidance, additional public hearings, and then the second reading for next month. We can turn it back over to Mr. Broker for
Okay.
the public hearing.
All right, thank you, Terry. Any questions among board members before we go to the public hearing? All right, we'll then begin the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please stand, state your name, address, and the name of the group or organization you represent, if any. If you have written material that you would like to share with our board members, staff is available to assist. We would ask that you be brief and concise in your remarks, since we have a number of people that may want to speak, and we want everyone to have an equal chance to be heard. Now, we will start on the right side of the room and go row by row. So why don't I turn around here? And this is the first row, so I look to my right, and I'll ask if anyone in the first row has any comments or anything they wish to say. Is there anyone on the second row that has anything they wish to say or any comments? Is there anyone else in the room that has anything they'd like to say or any comments with respect to the proposed budget? There being no comment?
Close the hearing.
Before you close the hearing, I do have a comment.
Please.
I just want to make sure. How was this advertised and who was it advertised to? I just want to make sure this information is put out there. Because I did ask for advertising, anything going forward out in the community to be brought forward to us. How was this advertised? How was this hearing advertised? My question.
So we followed the prior year procedures. We advertised in the Spinning Morning News, not in the Legal, on Saturday and then yesterday. Georgia law requires you to advertise the week it's presented, which is this week. Then we have 2 other advertisements set for the 1st and 4th of May to advertise not only the public meetings, but the adoption. And those notices were forwarded to admin, and I'm not sure how they were transmitted after that.
So we're advertising just so we can cover our bases, or are we advertising to get full input, is my question.
We're actually advertising 4 times more than state law requires, and we're having 4 public meetings instead of the required 1.
Okay. I mean, outside of the 4 public meetings, are we advertising for the first meeting, and then the next meeting, are we going to do that for the same thing, and so right, so forth?
We can increase advertising if that's the decision. It's listed on our website and in the paper, as we usually do.
Okay.
And the budget is also available here and at the admin facility for any member of the public to request a copy for review.
I understand that the budget is out there and is advertised and everything like that, but I also understand that the means of advertising obviously isn't working to get public opinion. And my thing is, being transparent, we want to get public opinion as much as possible. So before the next budget meeting, can we make sure that we find other amenable ways to get our advertising out here? Because I do want public opinion, because what always happens is we do this advertising, quote unquote, by legal standards, but then after all the budget goes through, then we get hit and bombarded by, well, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. So my thing is, we need to make sure before the last budget meeting, we're advertising as much as possible outside of the normal realms to make sure we're getting public opinion.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Durrance?
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with Jay that there's a direct result of the advertising not leading to public comments, because I think there's a tendency toward apathy on all kinds of issues, not just this, people just don't respond. But I would support the idea of us expanding the advertising to the Tribune, the Herald, and Connect Savannah, just to make sure that we're hitting all of the print media in town. And that might reach some of the ridership a little bit more readily.
We'll get those notices out this week.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's a very good suggestion. Thank you. There was a motion made that we close the public hearing. Is there a second?
So move. Second.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye and voting.
Can we vote on here now? Or?
Okay, I'm sorry, you can't vote there. All those in favor signify by closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move on to the action items. The first thing is the operating line of credit.
Thank you. Staff requests board to approve the renewal of Cat's line of credit and authorize the chairman, or in his absence, the vice chairman, to approve and sign the Wells Fargo line of credit proposal and related documents. We've been renewing the line of credit for multiple years to help us during the low transit tax receipts. Here we are again this year.
And it is my understanding that this is the $1.5 million line of
Yes.
credit. And the county has already approved its side of this. Do I hear a motion on the line of credit?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? There being no discussion, if everyone would please vote on the motion.
It's not showing up. It's not showing up on mine. I see it on Frank. See it on Frank. There you go. Appreciate it. Why you okay with it?
Brandon, will you check?
You got to click one of them. Let me click it.
Looking for him, Brandon?
That's what I'm saying. You gotta let him click it. He might have said no. Did everybody vote?
Why don't we simply all go ahead and vote? Oh, here we go. Okay. All right, the motion carries. Move on to the next item, the trolley purchase, item number 2 under action items.
Staff requests board to approve the purchase of two 29-foot fixed route buses for the City of Savannah downtown shuttle. As you know, we already operate downtown shuttle, and the city had ordered 2 more for the extension of that, but they're also now ordering an additional 2 more to extend the shuttle to the Savannah River landings area. And the cost is between $945,000 and $990,000, and the city has committed in writing to purchase those vehicles.
All right, do I hear a motion for approval?
So moved.
Mr. Durance? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
We talking about the trolley purchase?
I'm sorry?
We talking about the trolley, I'm trying to get my.
It's okay.
computer to work. I apologize. Talking about trolley purchase, right?
Yes. Motion carries. We'll move on to the next item. Action item 3, fixed route bus disposal. Mr. Colbert?
Thank you. Staff requests board approval to dispose of 3 fixed route vehicles and 4 paratransit vehicles. All 7 vehicles are well beyond their useful life. As per FTA guidelines, when we dispose of these, they'll go to the highest bidder or donate it to a nonprofit or dispose as scrap.
How many do they have?
There's 3 fixed route vehicles and 4 paratransit vehicles. Both sets of vehicles are 3 years beyond their useful life and well over the mileage as well.
The fixed route vehicles, what are the numbers?
30, 25, 30, 50.
I don't have that. Excuse me, I apologize. What was the numbers again?
30, 25, 30, 15, and 30, 12.
So 3012 is gonna be disposed.
Yes, sir.
How soon? If this is voted on, how soon?
The timing of that, Steve? Chime in on that?
As soon as it's approved, we'll have them disposed of.
Like this week then?
Yeah, by the end of this week.
Okay.
Reason why I'm asking, before I lived on the south side, I grew up on the west side. And the Henry 12 drops off right there in front of my grandmother's house. And when I got on the bus, to help one of my cousins off, there's a board that's sitting in the middle of the bus. And I know that's unsafe. It's a wooden plank board sitting in the middle of the bus. I know that's unsafe. And what I do is I write the numbers down to figure out who's in charge of that bus. Now, for some reason, and per my cousins, for some reason, the 3012, I mean, not 3012, but that route gets the worst of the worst buses, as far as our fleet is concerned. So I'm going, before I leave this facility, I'm going to get on every bus and see what the bus conditions look like, because we can't just have these buses just riding around looking raggedy. I mean, and I'm not trying to be against it. I'm glad we're trying to recycle these buses out, bring new buses in. But it's imperative that what we talked about last month with ridership, trying to expand our ridership from a working class to a ridership that is amenable to everybody, we can't have those kind of buses in the cycle. So I know the 3012, I looked at 3031 was another one I saw some issues with. And so now what I'm doing is I'm walking around and I'm going to start looking at buses. I ain't gonna let them know who I am.
Mhm.
I'm gonna walk on, look to see what the general conditions is, because I also talked to another cousin and said it's raining inside some of the buses. So these situations got to be fixed, and we just can't pick and choose which buses. We need to really be working on cycling all these buses out. And I just want to make sure I made a point here at the board meeting that we need to cycle those buses out. But I appreciate 3012 being on that list, and so I'll firmly vote to get one of these buses out. But we got to make sure we're cycling these buses out. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, just kind of a follow-up to Jay's question, do we choose these buses based on the condition of the buses or the age of the buses? As we're choosing one, until we get all of our new buses out, I know we probably still got some others that are beyond their
Useful life.
What's prescribed as their useful life. So when we choose which buses, if we've got a dozen that we need to take out and we can take 3, what's the process for choosing those 3?
But obviously if the repairs needed for the bus are high dollar and it's not worth doing that, then we would certainly be a prospect for be on the list. Specifically those 3 buses, I'm not exactly sure what's
Just the condition of the buses. Normally.
Not just the mileage or the years.
Yeah, it's just bad.
I'm afraid that.
Motion before the discussion.
Okay.
Oh,
We need a
I
motion
apologize.
first.
You're right. Need a motion. I apologize. That's on me.
It's okay, that's all right. So we
Motion.
haven't had a motion yet, so now we have a motion.
Sorry.
Is there a second?
Peace, sorry.
All right, there's been a second.
Enjoy
Any other
it.
discussion?
May I finish my discussion now? You
Yes.
got the timer going? I mean, we won't go.
Yeah, we don't have to-
Um,
Where's the timer?
Yeah, we'll go and vote now, and then you can discuss it. Even have more time.
Well, my next question would be then, okay, these 3 are cycling out. Do we already have a list of the next set of 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever this next in line to be cycled out as well? So when we do get buses as far as replacement is concerned, we can go ahead and cycle those out. So we constantly making sure our fleet is being cycled out, because I'm also, I know I said and I know what I said in December, I can stand for it a little bit, but I need all these buses turned green and dark green and white and all of them looking like we do care about what's going wrong. I know I kind of didn't want to spend that money, but it needs to come to a point now we need to be a unified fleet. And we got 3, 4 different kind of buses out there now. I don't know what the time frame is when we're going to get the new buses in. So we kind of need to go to being a unified fleet. And the buses with the red, white, that had the old cat sign when I was growing up, that kind of needs to be moved on out. We need to be moving on. So I want to make sure I put that statement on the table so Mike can hear me, that I'm retracting what I said 6 months ago.
Are any of these buses that have the bad exterior paint?
I think 3012 does.
Yes.
You know, the one that just went by. I think it was 3012, wasn't it? Did anybody see the number on the one that just drove by, the red and white? I think it was 3012.
Well, I'm relying on you because I can't see it.
3021 just went by and it's red and white.
All right, okay.
I didn't even start up
It's okay.
hearsay,
It's
but I
okay.
do want to make sure that's.
That's why we're here. So it's been moved, seconded, we've had the discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Or voting on the machine.
Well, I'm still in trolley purchase.
You moved.
You might as well just sit right there. Beverly, I'm voting yes.
Yes, sir.
Well, you moved, so.
Oh, I moved?
No, Mike.
I moved.
I
Sorry.
yeah. I'm voting yes, Beverly.
Okay,
Just for this though.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yours is locked in on yes for everything
You're
now.
not going to just give Beverly your proxy for the.
That I might as well. You got me?
I'm trying to get you. It's not letting me do anything
I think it's the lights in the building. You know you got to do this for every time I vote.
We can't go to a hand vote.
If you want to go to a hand vote, we can. Oh, I got everything
The
now.
last time that happened, it didn't go well. Say that the last time.
I got you.
You just-
Brandon?
you're just-
I know.
Pete, you good? Pete, you good? Man, you good?
You vote,
You
right?
voted?
Does it say yes under your vote? The last line of it should say your vote.
Gotta hit it again, man.
And that doesn't work, hit it with the water bottle. That's what I
Let me
would
turn
do.
it for you.
Hit it or pour water on it?
Oh, man.
Lubricate it.
Both. You gotta hit it
It's-
hard
it's-
enough to
you
make
gotta
it
wait for
work.
that start. That's how you know it's going.
That would be lubricating, that would be hydrating.
Why don't I ask for an oral response to the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Appreciate
We'll
it.
move on. And of course, it never fails. Here we
Right,
go.
yeah.
Have our results.
There we go.
So we move on to the fourth action item, item number 4, proposed response to the City of Savannah's alternative transportation RFP. This is an interesting proposal. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it.
So staff requests board to approve for CAT to submit a proposal in response to the City of Savannah's alternative transportation for late night and senior services RFP. So currently CAT operates the senior circulator, and the city is putting out an RFP to combine the senior circulator with also an on-demand platform to service late night workers and the like. And so CAT wants to respond to that RFP so we can gain that business.
All right, why don't I ask for a motion and second, then we'll have discussion.
Yeah.
Have a move, second?
Yeah, we got a vote started already on this.
Second.
Second. The motion has been moved and seconded. We'll now open for discussion. Mr. Burns?
Yes, I just have a question. The boundaries for the service on the east side was East Broad. Is there a reason why that was the boundary? Is that coming from the city's RFP or? Because we're going farther than what the circulators do right now on the western part of the city. We're going out 516. So I wasn't sure why we weren't going farther east than East Broad Street. Was that the city's request?
Is that, yeah, that's a good question.
Well, then I'll ask them.
If you don't mind my asking, this could look very different for us than the circulator that we currently have. I mean, it appears as though it's going to be an on-demand,
Correct.
Almost like an Uber service. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yep.
Is there any more discussion before we vote on the motion?
And this is considered between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m.? This is the first time I got it.
That would be for the late night service.
That's for employees.
Local business. The replacement for the senior circulator would be a daytime.
Right.
Breaker.
So this will take the senior circulator as well in the RFP?
Yes, it's combining.
Oh, I didn't see it that
This
way.
would replace the senior circulator with an on-demand service.
So eventually, we give all services with a Savannah soon, maybe?
Well, Savannah pays for the senior circulator.
Yeah, I think this could be particularly helpful for instance, I have a 17-year-old who works on one of the restaurants on River Street, and he gets off very late at night, but it's tough to go down and get him, and if he had access to something like this, it'd be really helpful, and other folks who have the same difficulties.
And the corridor breaches, what was the corridor? I mean, what's the zone for the service? What is the zone for the service?
I know it goes as far south as 37th.
That's
Curtis, you may.
Yeah, Grant, you read all the details on this.
Yeah, so the boundary is on the east side, East Broad, on the north side, River Street. On the west side, it's essentially where Sustainable Bellwood is, and then on the south side is 37th Street.
that's for the senior circulator replacement.
Right, they created a zone for
the on-demand.
But the late night service area is different.
the late night is a little bit different. They created 2 zones, and basically it's the historic district, which I think I'll have to go back on the details. I think the furthest south for that might be Liberty.
I think it was Liberty.
And then from Liberty, there's a second zone down to 37th. So it's still the same footprint, but they chop it a little bit differently for the late night service.
So it's the same footprint of the senior service, senior circulator?
Yeah, so the footprint is essentially the same.
For
The
the
city's
service
RFP said we are looking for a technology-driven service that can cover these parameters, and they set the boundaries, and they said basically from 8:30 until 4:30, it's going to be driven for seniors,
Correct.
specifically for seniors, and it's just a giant footprint. Cover this area, pick up the seniors, take them to where they want to go. At 10 p.m., it switches over to late night workers driven service from 10 p.m. until 5 a.m. We think that those are the times, although they're not specifically specified in the RFP. And then that is chopped into those two different zones. So people traveling between the zone south of Liberty to 37th, and then north of Liberty to River.
Tell me if I'm missing something here, but it seems to me like this is a far superior option than the senior circulator because it's essentially on-demand, door-to-door service as opposed to the circulator, which is a fixed route and 1 hour headway.
Yeah, and we're basically what we're proposing is that we're not taking away the stops altogether. For the senior piece, we're going to add some flexibility to the route. It's not going to be traditional fixed route service where it has 5, 6 time points. It might have 1 or 2 time points at either end, but where it goes from point A to point B is determined by the demand. So Kroger, we did a quick analysis of the senior circulator. Kroger's obviously a hot spot, and through this process, if we do get the award, we'll take a little bit closer look. The company that we've partnered with on the technology side has a model generation tool, which allows us to basically optimize this on-demand service. But going back to my point, that first piece for the seniors, it's not going to be 100% on demand. There's going to be some fixed time points built in. For the late night service, we're planning to go completely on demand.
But the senior service is an improvement over the current service. It should be.
It should be. I mean, yeah, exactly. Senior circulator currently gets between 8 to 10 passengers per hour, which isn't horrible. I mean, a pure on-demand service nationwide gets, like on the high end, 5 passengers per hour. That's why we want to keep some time points in there, but add some flexibility to it.
Mr. Jones?
How's it gonna, and this might be an oxymoron question, how's it gonna tie into paratransit? Is it going to defer any paratransit? Because the reason why I'm asking, it says something about American Disability Act, compliant vehicles can provide complete compliant services. Is it going to deter, or is it going to pull any of that off?
So nothing to do with paratransit. So we have ADA compliant vehicles. So one of the benefits we would have as far as the proposer goes is that we would be able to provide ADA compliant vehicles for this service.
But can we look at some of the paratransit that goes on in that corridor and see if some of that can be pushed into, I'm not trying to take paratransit away, but some of that might be filtered into paratransit if it's a senior circulator type system. I'm just asking the question because I don't know the question to ask.
So paratransit you have to apply for and qualify for and that whole program, but this is more of a non-paratransit entity, so can we put people from paratransit on this? Well,
I'm not saying put them on it, but make the suggestion that it's available service to them. I'm not saying take them away from paratransit. But
it's eligible right now with the senior circulator to
okay.
them. This is predominantly shifting to an on-demand scenario as well as a late-night component. And so we talked about how when we do our system redesign, we were going to look at some fixed route on-demand scenarios for our areas that have lower density. And this gives us the opportunity on this specific RFP to test out that on-demand software capability before we do a complete system redesign with this in mind.
And with this system, I know we're adapting the RFP from the city of Savannah, and they say this is the territory they actually want to be involved in.
Right.
Now that if the city of Savannah is going to underwrite or help or whatever the terminology you want to say, if they're going to pay for it, now can we take whatever dollars or services we had in that and expand it past that point? Because I know all the seniors don't live just in that corridor. There's seniors everywhere, so
right.
It might be an opportunity we can expand senior services as well. Have we considered that?
Outside of what the city provides for the senior services, our fixed route is available to seniors as well.
Okay, but this is a specific corridor
that they're going to pay for.
That they're paying for. But we've been
seniors.
paying for it, or somebody's been paying for it in the past, or Savannah's already been paying for it?
They've been paying for it.
All right, so are we talking about expansion outside of it? Are we looking at comprehensive studies saying that we have more seniors moving out in this area, or are we just going with the corridor syntax that the city of Savannah has earmarked this area as a senior service area, so we're just sticking with that area because city of Savannah said so. I'm asking a question, that's just for lack of term.
Can I try to answer that?
Yeah, please.
And I can only speak for one member of council,
I got
not
you.
the rest. But my goal is for us to continue to expand our contract services. So my hope would be to do just that, but you have to start.
Yeah, start something. I got you.
But my goal, that's why I asked the question about why it stopped, why the corridor stopped at East, and that's the city parking services folks, I imagine. created
Because
that.
it has the parking decks in there.
Because
so I
that's
figured.
what's here, and I guess that's what the circulator has been. So, yeah, my goal in the long run would be a substantial expansion into the broader urban core. But that will take a little time, and
But I just want to make sure
more
we are
support for the
working
rest of
toward.
council, but I think
Yeah.
that's certainly a goal that I would like to see us.
Yeah, and I think it's certainly fortunate in that, anytime the city, comes to us and says, we want to fund a particular service, please respond to our RFP. That does indeed free up resources within Chatham Area Transit to devote, to other parts of our service area. So those are all good questions and a good discussion. There's been a motion made, it's been seconded. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye or pressing the yes button on your screen. So while we wait for all of your votes to be released, there we go, it never fails. I think the screen is voice activated by my voice saying, well, now, something like that.
It's
So I
got
guess we're in luck.
It's got Frank away, but Frank voted yes. I passed the problem over to Frank.
It's updated now.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so we've completed the action items. We'll now move to the presentations. We'll move to the first presentation, which is the TDP update.
Thank you. We have Grant Sparks that's going to give us a presentation on the
No, I was cursing you. Sorry, just missed.
Sit right over. See, I lean this way, so you got the first.
I'm gonna hit the wrong target.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So at last month's board meeting, Mr. Colbert presented the strategic plan. And afterwards, there were some questions about how the strategic plan aligns with the TDP. Some of you were interested in receiving an update on the current TDP, and then also on plans for the future TDP. So I put this presentation together to hopefully answer some of those questions. So before I walk you through the TDP process and summarize some of the recommendations from that document, I first wanted to highlight the biggest takeaways from this presentation. That's really the importance of financial projections in a TDP. So our last two TDPs recommended a variety of great improvements, which were vetted by the community. But to implement each of those improvements, it required additional resources, financial resources. So that last TDP from 2013 to 2018, there were three major assumptions that were not realized, hence why many of the recommendations never came to fruition. The first one was a $4.7 million annual increase in our operating revenues for new and improved service. The second one, the TDP provided a vehicle replacement schedule, which was good. Every TDP probably needs one of those. But it averaged roughly $4.1 million for annual vehicle replacement and expansion. That's out of our capital budget. And then last but not least, the TDP estimated that the ridership would grow to $4.3 million in 2018. That's today. So just touching on each of these, annual operating cost increase, $4.7 million. If during the budgeting process, the planning department or the system development department was told that $4.7 million we had to create new service, that would be the best thing ever. We have a lot of good ideas, and the TDP came up with a lot of good ideas, so we would implement many of those recommendations. But that never happened. We didn't get any money for new and improved service. It was flat. On the capital side, $4.1 million annually. I want to remind you all, 2 years ago when I first got here, we had just received an FTA grant for $1.6 million, and everybody celebrated like it was the best thing ever. This TDP suggested we need $4.1 million every year to sustain a vehicle replacement program, which we didn't have. So that was another assumption. And then 4.3 million annual passengers in 2018. We're falling. We're at 3.2, 3.1, right in that area. And this was if none of the recommendations in the TDP were implemented. So this was worst case scenario. They were projecting 4.3 million passengers, which is short.
All right,
Yes, sir.
before you go too far, I don't want to get into a beaten up session of why, because it's going to strategically put my questions at why too. Because when you say vetted by the community, I've attended community meetings and I'm not seeing community here.
I'm talking about the 2013-2018 TDP, the process for creating that plan. There was community.
So you're talking about predating 2013, the process into it. That's what you're saying.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So okay, then with the TDP going forward, did we vet the community? The time I can only question on is the time I'm here, and I'm not seeing us vet the community.
We haven't started the TDP community input process yet for the one that we are about to embark on.
But we're in the TDP time period of 2013, 2018, and we're not vetting. That's my question.
I'm gonna go over the future
Right.
TDP at the end.
And
I think that will answer some of those questions.
And the vehicle replacement piece, it's on us to make sure that we're trying to get vehicles. I understand if money ain't there, but it's on us on an annual basis to get those vehicles.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we're not advocating or doing what we got to do to get those vehicles, and we can't expect that 4.1 or whatever it costs to get those vehicles to be replaced.
Right, and we know based on our fleet size, we know how many on average we need to replace every year. The problem is the money's not there. In the TDP, in the 2013-2018 TDP, basically that amount every single year was then multiplied. Well, 80% of that was assumed to be covered by the federal government or some sort of funding source outside of our local SPLOST. But as we know, those grants are very hard to get. We got a couple, but we don't get them every single year, those discretionary grant programs. We apply for them every year, but we don't get them.
And my last question is, the ridership not growing, nobody in 14, 16 months has explained to me why our ridership is going away or growing. No one's giving me a definitive answer, a real, true, hardcore, statistically driven answer about our ridership. And so until I get a hardcore answer about our ridership, I can't take the assumption that ridership's not growing. I don't know why ridership's not growing, and I need a hardcore answer about why ridership's not growing.
I won't spend too long on that one, but I will say that ridership nationwide for transit is going down. And that's, all the experts are saying, I mean, there are a number of reasons for it, but people are saying that it's the low fuel cost.
But ridership in Colorado is different from ridership in Savannah, Georgia, and it's a difference between the two and why ridership is going down. I understand what you're saying. It's a percentage, it's about 0.03% is ridership across the nation is going down. But Denver's ridership may be going down for a different reason versus our ridership going down for a different reason.
Yeah, definitely. And demographics are obviously different in each community. We had Uber and Lyft come to town in about 2015, 2016, and that's when we saw a serious decline. Fuel prices are also very different depending on the community, and same with vehicle ownership. Those are all factors into it. What is the exact reason why ours is going down? It's a combination of all of that. What is the most important one? I'm not so sure.
Gotcha. Go ahead, man.
Sure.
I'll ask the engineer.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the big takeaway. Those three pieces, and financial projections are key to a good TDP. So now I'm going to kind of bring us back and just go over what a TDP is. So the Transit Development Plan is a short-term business plan. This is usually a comprehensive document used internally to develop the transit system. It's an opportunity to evaluate existing conditions and engage the public on potential improvements. That gets to the community outreach piece. It is a state and federal funding prerequisite. During our triennial reviews with FTA every 3 years, they ask to see our TDP. It is a document that's typically updated every 5 years. And then it's usually prepared by staff and/or consultants. The last 2 TDPs were primarily produced by consultants, although staff did have input. So, the elements included in a TDP vary state by state. Some states actually require certain elements. Here in Georgia, there are no requirements. And so here, I just put together a list of some of the elements included in a TDP. Agency overview, obviously, local plans review, existing conditions. I won't read them all, but you kind of get the sense of what's included in these things. I will say that because they're comprehensive documents, they're usually very thick. The ones that I've seen range anywhere from 200 to 400 pages long. So these are really, really big comprehensive documents that get into the details. So, what is a strategic plan? There's no state or federal requirement for a strategic plan, but some agencies use them as a prerequisite to developing their TDP because it helps provide guidance for that development of the TDP and give staff and the public a vision for that 5-year horizon period. So some common elements, this is obviously much more simple. Executive summary, mission and vision, high-level goals, objectives, benchmarks, and periodic updates. These documents are usually between 15 to 20 pages long. They're not as thick. They're a little bit easier to digest. And I'll point out that the mission and the vision, the high-level goals and objectives, those are pieces that are then pulled into the TDP usually. And we plan on doing that with this upcoming TDP, is extracting what was done with the board and pulling it into our TDP. And I'll kind of talk about how that works here in just a second. So just to kind of recap, these are the steps that you usually take to developing the strategic plan and the TDP. You start with some board outreach, which was already completed over the course of last year. Strategic plan development, which we just did, and we're right here. And Mr. Jones, you kind of mentioned it earlier, the community outreach piece. We're in between step 2 and 3. The next step is the community outreach for the TDP development. And so this, again, it's about a year process. We're going to fold the redesign efforts into this whole thing because with the redesign, there's a huge community outreach component. So it doesn't make any sense for us to go through a redesign with community outreach and then go through a TDP with community outreach. We need to synchronize the two. And then once the TDP is developed and implemented, then we have to annually update the documents, giving a progress report.
Hey, the last TDP was done in 2013, and it's done every 5 years. So this one's going to be late.
So it covered the two TDPs ago, is 2007 to 2012. Those are the years that it covered.
It was done in 12.
It was completed in 12, and the TDP covered the 2 of them ago was 2007 to 2012. The last one was 2013 to 2018.
Correct.
So keeping in the same track, the next one will be 2019 to 2024. So 2019, so long as we have it completed in 2019, I'd like to have it done before our next triennial review, which is next summer. That's kind of the window that we're looking at.
So it's based on I guess it's on a transit time frame and not our fiscal year. So 19 actually would be July then. Just
Yeah.
based on the past.
It doesn't specify anywhere in these TDP documents the like start date to the end date, calendar year versus fiscal year.
I got you.
It's just 2007 to 2012, 2013 to 2015.
So it's just loosey-goosey.
It's-
As long
it-
as it's done before December 31st, 2019, is compliant?
Yeah, I mean, again, our next triennial review, they'll probably want to take a look at it, and next
that's
year is
when?
2019. The summer of 2019, I think, is when we're due for our next
The
triennial.
earliest. It would be next- that
And so if we show them 2013 to 2018 TDP at that point, might not go over so well. We can always say that we're working on updating
We'll
it.
make those
But
changes.
but we should have it done by next summer.
Who does the triennial review? The FTA?
FTA.
Grant, just one question or a comment. I think it'd be really interesting in that we are going to be doing the community outreach with respect to the TDP and with respect to the redesign, all at the same time. So this would be an opportunity to have an extremely robust opportunity for community outreach and input as to the plan we come up with.
It was a lot of good information and data in 13 to 18, and I'm sad we did not implement a lot of the stuff or try to even do some of that stuff that was in that whole term, because it was a lot of stuff that we would have moved forward. It would move Chatham Area Transit forward. So I don't want us to go to the point of doing a plan for 19 to 23 or whatever the year is, and we do the same exact thing we did from 7 to 12 and 13 to 18, because I'm looking at the routes. From 7 to 18, it says 14 ain't changed at all.
We
And
not
haven't
gonna
made any
pick up
changes
the
at all.
goals that we didn't accomplish from this TDP?
I'm going to go over some of this
Okay.
here in a second.
I'm a hush.
I'm going to dive into the last two TDPs, what we did, what we didn't do, why we didn't do them, and what our plans are for the next one.
Cool.
So let me first just touch on the 2007 to 2012 TDP. This is our first known TDP, the first one that I actually have a physical document for. It was prepared by Urbitran, and it was 324 pages long, had 2 technical memorandums with 50 and 150 pages respectively, and over 100 tables, graphs, and maps. It was a very big document, and it was organized with a handful of sections, which you see here on the left. I'm specifically going to go into these route recommendations on the next slide. So, this TDP had a number of very good recommendations. Expanded service hours, improved frequencies, express trips added, eliminate service redundancies, more direct service, simplify the routing scheme, and discontinue routes that aren't doing so well. The one takeaway from this TDP was that in order to do all of these, we needed $138 million in additional revenue annually for those improvements. 1.38 million. Sorry if I misspoke. And this was a while ago. Obviously, this is more than 10 years ago. So I'm not totally sure what we did and didn't do. I believe, looking back at our different services that we offered, I think we did do some of them. But real quick, I wanted to touch on improved frequencies and simplified routing, because these are 2 points that are going to be seen in every single TDP. It was in this one, it was in the one after it, it'll probably be in the upcoming TDP. And who doesn't want, frequent service and a simple routing scheme? I mean, everybody wants that. The problem is there's some outside forces at play that make it very difficult to achieve these two. So I was looking at, in this TDP, Route 14, and in this TDP, it said that on Route 14 we had 20-minute peak frequencies. We also had 20-minute peak frequencies on routes 25, 29, and the 12 Henry also. And so I was wondering, not a whole lot has changed with those routes. What's going on here? How are we able to do those frequencies then, and we can't do them now. Route 14 has 30-minute frequencies, yet we use 6 vehicles peak. It's the same amount of vehicles. So here's Route 14 in 2007 compared to 2018. 98% of the route is exactly the same. The big difference is down here, right there. You see, Walmart was constructed, right? And so on 204 on Abercorn, when you come down here, we were now expected to serve both sides of the street, not just one. So we have Savannah Mall on one side and Walmart on the other, but there's no turnaround on 204. If there was like a traffic circle built at the end, then we can just go right down 204, turn around, and then come back, and that wouldn't have cost much time. But we couldn't do that, and so we had to go behind Savannah Mall, go down Mohawk, come down Apache, then hit Walmart on the other side of Abercorn, and then make our way all the way back. Also, St. Joseph's Candler, we added that little deviation in there as well.
Where exactly did you want the turn? What would the turnaround? I'll talk about that.
I mean, basically the takeaway is although it was a very minor adjustment, to service Walmart and to service St. Joseph's Candler added 10 minutes to the route. And that's why we are now at 30-minute frequencies instead of 20-minute.
It changes downtown and at the mall as well. They make any difference.
Right.
Yeah.
This one, I'm not so sure what happened there. This obviously was the creation of this facility. We did a loop around the downtown area in 2007. Now we come here. So all of these changes combined added 10 minutes to the service, which I thought was interesting. These things seem very minor, but when a Walmart comes to town and that we're not at the table to say it really needs to be here so it's not going to screw up our service, that's a problem. And we see that with all these other routes as well, where our frequencies are actually getting worse in some areas because we're expected to serve these new developments and nobody brought us to the table. So I just wanted to point that out. I thought that was really interesting. And with respect to time, I'm going to try to hurry up here a little bit. Quickly on the 2013-2018 TDP, this is the one that we're currently in. Obviously, we're in 2018, and this is the one that some of you might be a little bit more familiar with. It was prepared by the Center for Urban Transportation Research down in South Florida. And it was very, very well done. It's a little hard to read. It's 374 pages long, but they did a really, really good job of reaching out to the community, getting input, meeting with stakeholders, meeting with public officials, and devising a plan for this 5-year period. And I've highlighted mission, vision, goals, and objectives that was brought into this TDP. And then they also obviously made some service recommendations. So, as I discussed in the first slide of this presentation, the big assumption here was that annually we would get $4.7 million of additional operating revenue for new and improved service. Of that, $4.7 million, they suggested to kind of do these things: expand service hours, improve frequencies, realign the time points, which actually doesn't really cost anything, create new routes, there's obviously a cost there, new zonal service, and launch a commuter and express service.
Grant.
Sure.
It's 4.7 million. That was by 2018 to get 4.7.
Correct. So it was a phased approach.
Incremental, but when somebody's looking at this and says, we want to do these things and it's going to cost this much money, is there some realism in there about whether or not that money is achievable or where it would come from, or is this just a blue sky daydreaming kind of thing?
I'm not in the operating and capital plan that they produced. It was very vague as far as where this money was coming from. On the capital side, they listed all the grant programs that were available that we needed to apply for. I think all but 1 or 2 are still in existence. The other grant programs are gone. JARC is one of them. New Freedom is one of them. Those are gone. On the operating side, I'm not really sure where they were expected to get those revenues. I assume that the $4.3 million riders, that's about 1 million additional. It's some fair revenue, so there's something that you can do with that. and maybe it was the tax digest was, we assumed that property values were going up. I mean,
I guess where I'm going with the question is, my sense of this is that some of this wasn't very realistic projection.
right.
And maybe that's just hindsight. But I guess a lesson I want to take away from this is let's be a little more conservative, a little bit more realistic in this next TDP.
Yes, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Grant, if I could just make one comment.
Mhm.
And isn't it also the case that, these are really aspirational plans, like, like we do in visioning programs and that sort of thing, where we all say, if we could do whatever we wanted to do, these are the things we'd like to do. And then once we identify those things, then we figure out what it's gonna cost, and that's how we come up with the 4.7 million.
Correct.
It's not the other way around.
Yes.
So it's feasible to say that $1.18 million per year is not a growth pattern we can actually accomplish?
Not historically.
I mean, to some degree, I think there's, well, inflation obviously is factored into our revenues. There is growth in the tax digest usually.
It's equated to about 2 to 3% every year for the past 5 years, which in dollars is 250 to 350,000 extra a year.
So we have been getting that 250 to 300,000 extra per year?
We have, but we've been making $1 million debt payment without that being in the
All right.
budget.
And when did the $1 million debt payment, remind me when the $1 million debt payment came in?
January 2014.
2014. So that could have been the deterrent that's holding back the 1.18 annual based on that number right there.
It's $1 million over.
Yeah. So basically, when that falls off the table, then we'll be able to have $1 million coming in, I guess, going 2019 forward. Are we going to be able to have it?
FY20 going forward if the county doesn't lower the millage.
Okay. I mean, the other thing is, with these 6 points, how aggressive? I think Commissioner Odell was alluding to it. I need to see what did we do to try to accomplish these 6 points? Cool.
Okay, next detail. All right, so I knew that was coming. So the TDP broke that $4.7 million down into more specifics, which was great. They said basically for the Saturday service improvements, it would cost $362,000. Sunday service improvements, $149,000, and so on. So you can see what those recommendations actually cost by line item. And I starred 3 of them because we actually did do some of those. In year 1, we improved the span of service for Route 14 on Saturdays. We did the same thing for Route 14 on Sundays. We didn't do the full thing. We didn't do every route that was suggested, but we did one, our biggest route. And then all of you know, I think, that we also implemented the Airport Express. So again, going back to the operating revenues assumed, so you say, okay, well, how did we do that? Here at the bottom, we didn't get all the revenues that we anticipated. And the only way to provide new service with an existing budget that's flat is you got to make cuts somewhere else. So your Route 13, Mr. Jones, was one of the casualties of the last TDP. So was 3A. And then we made some service reductions on 10, 11, and 20 also to make up for the new expenses on these improvements. So this is something that is very, very important to understand as we move into the next TDP is if we're going to assume a flat budget and worst case scenario, we don't get any more money, we're going to probably get input from the community, later hours, more frequency, simplified service, new commuter routes, new zonal routes, all this stuff, everything that's in here. But if the revenues aren't there, then in order to realize those improvements, you have to make cuts somewhere else. That's the only way to do it.
Which route is 13?
This is the south side one that went to Coffee Bluff. So what we did with that, from my understanding, was we cut 13 completely and then extended Route 20 to cover the Coffee Bluff area. So the frequencies got worse on 20.
Correct.
It was covering a larger area. Now it's not really a good service. One of our underperforming routes, it was all because we wanted to add an Airport Express route and do these improvements to Route 14. So it was a tough decision that was made, but that's what we did. So this is a figure that was pulled directly from the TDP. You can see they did provide a roadmap for how to phase in all these improvements. Year one, this is the one that clearly, right out of the gates from 2013, we wanted to hit these. It was very obvious. Airport Express was implemented. Those improvements on Saturday and Sunday span of service were included for Route 14. We did not do the zonal service for the airport, and then none of these were done. So we didn't get past year one really. And again, it's my understanding that it was more of a financial thing.
And if you don't get past year one, then you really can't say why we didn't make the 4.8. Go ahead.
Do you want to elaborate?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. So that's where we've been. But how is this next TDP from 2019 to 2024 going to be any different? For starters, the last two we contracted out most of the work. For this one, we're going to bring in a lot of that work in-house, and I'll go over who's doing what here in a second, or at least the draft plans. But first, the outline for the TDP, I really wanted it to be answer these 5 questions, very basic. Where are we now? Where are we going? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? And are we getting there? So in the first section, where are we now? We're going to take a snapshot of our existing services today, how we're currently funded, and review any local plans and how they impact us, such as the NPO's long-range plan, the Parking Matters study, the Chatham County blueprint. Any plans that have been done recently, we'll go over them and see how they would impact us in the future and try to synchronize our TDP with those plans.
Have we done that with the blueprint before?
I didn't see any mention of the Chatham County blueprint in the last TDP. They did review a lot of the plans.
But we had something, they had a plan.
Comprehensive.
Yeah, comprehensive.
You mentioned that the Walmart thing about, not really having a conversation about that. Is there a way to have that larger scale business development conversation as part of this? And I would think in particular CETA and some of the manufacturing stuff that they're starting to do out on the west side.
Yeah, I mean, we'd obviously love for CETA to be part of the TDP development process. To be part of the development conversation, it takes more than just a document prepared by Chatham Area Transit to be at the table. We really need the help of everyone. It goes beyond this room to get at that table. We can certainly, look at that and maybe add a section on development and where the gaps are right now in the process. I think that's a good idea. Okay, so where are we now? So we are now in section 2. Section 2 addresses where are we going. So this looks at current trends, and it basically takes all of the data we have available to us and crunches the numbers to see what routes, segments, and stops are doing well and which ones are not. We'll also compare at an agency level how our system is doing compared to our peers. We'll look at the most recent demographic data that we have from the census. We'll also take a very close look at travel behaviors. That's where we bring in the origin destination study that we recently completed. And I've starred this section because our redesign consultants do a lot of this stuff anyway. We're gonna be the ones that prepare this section, but our consultants are already gonna do some of this, so we're gonna integrate it into our own section. All right, so where do we want to be? This is going to be the most time-intensive part of the TDP process. It's the public outreach piece, and this is where we engage our riders, we engage our stakeholders, elected officials, staff, operators, and everyone else to hear what their needs are. So obviously, advisory committee meetings, stakeholder meetings, surveys. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that we meet with everybody who has an opinion. And then at the very end, we'll do a needs assessment, compiling all of that data. And then goals and objectives. This is the opportunity where we take the strategic plan that was just completed and we say, are those goals and objectives in the strategic plan aligned with what we just heard back from the community? And this is our opportunity to tweak them if needed. And again, I started this one. Our redesign consultant is doing a heavy public outreach component in their redesign. So we're going to kind of blend all of this together. We as staff will obviously be doing a large part of this as well. Okay, so then how do we get there? This is the action plan. So basically all the information from sections 1, 2, and 3, we collect it, we analyze it, and then we come up with the game plan moving forward. An alternatives analysis will be included, the actual service recommendations, and then go over an operations improvement plan, capital improvement plan, and in the event that we get more funding and expand to the west side, we're going to add a section in here for opportunities for that expansion. These first 2 bullet points, this is really where our redesign consultant is going to spend a lot of their time, is analyzing the different alternatives and then coming up with the recommendations. I will say that once we come up with the recommendations, we then need to re-vet those recommendations with the public. And we do that for 2 reasons. One, to make sure that what we came up with is what they like, what they need. But also for Title VI compliance, we need to make sure that what we created falls in line with the community's needs, and that we have those public meetings, etc. And the last section, are we getting there? This is where the TDP is going to provide guidance for ensuring that progress is being made towards our plan. So this section is going to include performance measurements and benchmarks for evaluation. It'll also provide guidance for how the plan should be updated on an annual basis. This is something that we haven't done. It was mentioned at the last meeting that we probably need to do it. And maybe, at the end of each fiscal year, our staff, we do a presentation to the board just telling them what we were able to do, what we weren't able to do. And maybe we have to revise a few things if revenues fall short of expectations. So I think it's important to add that in there. But again, this is just a draft plan. We can add in more elements like the development piece if we want. And that is my presentation. So I'd be happy to take any additional questions if you have them.
Pete, on the expansion plans where you had it, is that going to include the other municipalities and some type of plan and how we can get them on board with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to. We can't put together plans for expansion without them. We would just be drawing lines on a map. So yeah, I think it has to.
Commissioner Jones?
You said in-house versus contract service in this term, I guess, for 18 to 23, 24, whatever year it is?
19 to 24.
19 to 24. If we're talking about going in-house versus contract service, and we did heavy contract service in the last one, correct?
Mm-hmm. And the one before.
And the one before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, contract service only comes before us and gives us recommendations. They can't tell us what to do. We still have to do what we have to do. So it would have been in-house anyway, because contract service would say, hey, here's a recommendation, and that would have been on us to vote on it, and then in-house would have had to make sure it happened. So what's so different from the conversation? That's what I'm asking. What's so different from the conversation?
Dave Cutter prepared the 300 and some odd page report. They did the analysis. They did all the work leading up to that. They did the public outreach events. They pretty much put that TDP together. Yes, the recommendations, it still needs to be voted on, but they did all that work. So what Grant's saying is that in-house is that we're not going to contract that work out. We have software where we can do a lot of it ourselves, and then timing with the redesign with Jared Walker, they're going to be doing a lot of work already that we would need for that TDP as well. So we want to spend the $200,000 or whatever it costs to do that.
Now, and this is going against every grain in my body. However, I believe in that kind of contract service because what it does, it gives a different set of eyes that we won't see in-house. And I think we need another set of eyes to kind of identify whether it be the full service or some kind of service. We need some kind of eyes to see what we're doing in-house because we get blinders. It's like me in my house. I may not see my house as being dirty, but somebody else comes to my house and they'll see it's dirty because they're not used to what I'm used to. And so I think we have to have, I understand in-house and we have technology to do all that, but we need some of those components to actually be outside outsourced so we're getting a better view of it, like the fixed route. I know we got the fixed route stuff going on. The paratransit, we got that going on. But we got, and my only beef and gripe with contract service is doing contract service, and we get the paperwork, and then we just sit and fold our hands and wait months, years, or whatever to move out on that. So I don't have a disagreement with that kind of contract service. I think we need to have it. And the other thing dealing with the TDP, when I read the TDP from 13 to 18, that contract service started a full year out, and so they got a representation from spring, summer, fall, and winter to a full year understanding of how our service works. If we're just starting up now or whenever we start up, then we're not going to get that full range of service because service changes by season.
We're late.
So if we start now on the TDP, and I'm not here to put point blaming. If we start now, we're not getting full aptitude to how we accomplish service over a full year time period. And so, and they did in doing research, that contract company did a real good job of getting out there and having focus groups. And I think my opinion, when I come to our focus groups, we may have 5 people in the room, and 5 people are not going to represent the whole body. And it goes back to what I said earlier, and what Bill was talking about. We need to expand our range of communication. You know, we got to make sure that we're meeting people because I don't want where the TDP starts and we behind the 8 ball because we didn't communicate with all the different partners. And I don't think it needs to be conservative at all. I think it needs to be aggressive because we're in aggressive times. I don't think we need to be conservative. We need to be conservative on some points, but we don't want to be conservative as far as the whole plan is concerned. That's all I have to say.
When is it actually scheduled to start?
There is no scheduled start date.
No, but y'all got an idea of when you're going to start.
Yeah, once we have our consultants on board,
which is next month,
the redesign consultants, once they're on board, that's when we go to the table and we say, what is the schedule?
So they've been chosen.
last
Yeah,
month.
the board
Okay.
approved it.
We approved fixed route and
System redesign.
system redesign.
Okay, are there
Paratransit's already.
any other questions for Mr. Sparks?
No, we're looking at a year out if you're talking about June of 19 anyhow.
Yeah. and
That
I-
gives us a full year to get this prepared.
Yeah, I wouldn't focus too much on the deadline of 2019 because again, FTA, they're not going to ding us for this. I think they're more concerned that we have a good plan. So they're not going to say, spend all this money to develop a TDP so you meet this deadline. And so long as this plan meets our needs, like to your point, Mr. Jones, if we need the consultants to be here and get a full year's worth of work in, then I think that's what we do. We don't spend all this money, all this time, and then rush to get it done to meet this loosey-goosey deadline. There's nothing out there that says you have to have it done by X date. This is for our good and for our development. Is why we have those dates thrown in there.
And if Jared Walker doesn't get us where we need to be, then we will seek other consultants at some time if we don't have what we need. Because they're handling one specific part.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not everything, then we obviously have to find someone that, other than in-house, if we don't have it, to do the work.
Well, the community outreach, like the scope for the redesign includes significant community outreach, develop alternatives, and provide recommendations, essentially. Everything else that's included, that's on us. And that's the difference between the last TDP and this TDP. Instead of asking the consultant to prepare 400 pages, like a lot of that stuff we could have done ourselves.
Right.
And so instead of paying them to write 400 pages, focus on these specific tasks. This is where we need the expertise. We'll handle the rest.
And we can add that if needed.
Yes.
Outside of Jared Walker.
Right.
So Walker's contract projected to take about a year?
Out of here.
Right, anything further? Any other questions for Mr. Clark? Grant, thank you very much. And I'd like to acknowledge Commissioner Odell. We're glad you were able to join us.
Thank you.
You must have had to have left very early to get here.
I left at 5, but I got stuck for 58 miles behind a sheriff's deputy who was driving 50.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
And I was too afraid to pass him, so I just followed him for 58 miles.
Well, we did excuse you because we didn't know how soon you'd get here, but let the minutes reflect that you did it very well.
Thank you so very
Happy to
much.
have you.
The speed limit on Highway 7.
I know, but I was scared.
All right, we'll move on to our next presentation, state and local legislation.
It's a sign of guilty conscience.
That's what it is.
Yeah, I know.
Hand those out, please.
Because I was doing 90.
You will hand those out as well. Thank you.
You got the speaker queue up?
I had.
I'm still second in line to speak and I'm not even on it.
Guess who's first?
It's not up.
Yeah.
I'm first.
It was not fun.
Good morning.
You're not
Good
even on
morning.
the list, because there is no list.
Thank you for having me here today. We had a session ending report in the packet. What I have distributed to you is kind of a selective overview of where we are, where we were, how we got there, information about the final version of the piece of legislation, the final vote, which was, I believe, in the Senate, it was 48-6. In the House, it was 155-19. Every member of our delegation voted in favor of the legislation at each step of the way where they had an opportunity to do so. They were very helpful to us in terms of trying to move this forward. I have included a synopsis overview of HB 930 that goes through section by section. Then later in the packet, there are a number of versions of language that we recommended to both the House and Senate as this legislation moved through the process. This process was very guarded, held very close to the vest, and in fact, it was nip and tuck at the very end of the process whether this legislation was even going to emerge, to the point that on the 39th day at 6 o'clock in the afternoon with the clock ticking, the House adjourned or went into recess. The Senate continued to operate for about an hour and then stood down while the governor, the governor's staff, the lieutenant governor's staff, the speaker's staff, and conferees gathered in the lieutenant governor's office for a 3-hour meeting to hash out issues contained within this legislation. The legislation is metro-centric at best.
Yeah.
It focuses on the 13-county non-attainment area in metro Atlanta and creates what is a new agency called the ATL. The ATL came out of it, that is the Atlanta Transit Link Authority. It is housed within SRTA, State Road and Tollways Authority, and Atlanta Link, or the ATL, will essentially replace GRETA with the concept that there will be continuity, seamless ability to move from one transit mode to another as you move through the 13-county metro Atlanta region. The concept is that MARTA will control the expansion of heavy rail into other areas within the region.
Yeah.
The individual counties within the region, within the non-attainment area, will have the ability to determine what their preferred transit mode is going to be and how it is implemented, with a review by the ATL board to make certain that there is some contiguity, cohesion, and connectedness to provide transportation throughout the region. If you read through the legislation, it actually appears that the ATL is taking over everything. It is not, but the language had to be changed to give them that broad authority, to give them the capability to work with the other local governments in that region.
Where
Yes.
it says create 159 individual districts, is that the 159 counties?
Yes, that's the way this legislation had to be written, and that is the way that all of the transit taxation legislation has been written. And I will take you back to 2010 just briefly, so we can go through the T-SPLOST, which was voted on in 2012. A lot of T-SPLOST survives in this. 2015, we had TIA, the Transportation Investment Act, that shuffled how the taxes are collected, really did not create any additional local tax authority. Last year, HB 134 was passed, which made it clear that you could do a one-county T-SPLOST
Yes.
referendum. Bryan County is doing that. I think there are 4 or 5 other counties that are doing that. We had introduced House Bill 604, which was a significant placeholder for us and for the state. And what 604 did, it said that transit tax legislation could go for transit purposes, which include maintenance and operations, which was not in the final version of HB 134, that it could be up to $0.01 and it could be for 40 years. Well, when you look at what moved forward for HB 930, it includes the ability of transit purposes to have maintenance and operations. It allows it to go up to $0.01, and it allows it to go for 30 years. So we're getting there to where we need to be. We were pushing for the capability for a single county to be able to do this standalone. One of the key catchphrases that the chairman, the speaker, and the Senate leadership wanted is to promote regionalization, interconnectivity of systems. We pointed out to the chairman, the speaker, and anybody that would stop and listen for a few minutes, we don't have an opportunity in a whole number of situations to have that connectivity because we're the only system. There is not a transit system in Effingham. There is not a transit system in Bryan. But we were able to move forward with them at least embracing the concept of being able to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with a county. Unfortunately, with all of the turmoil over what Cobb County was going to be doing, and let me back up, there are 10 districts in 13 counties configured in a manner not known to man. They are configured based on transportation corridors. So they cross a number of different counties to get that number of 10. So the idea was to give us the opportunity to enter into an intergovernmental agreement which state law allows to last for 50 years to provide some level of transit services, i.e. perhaps park and ride, to Effingham County. That language specifically did not make it into the bill. The way the land, if you read through the amendments, you'll see where we were constantly moving to make it a single county or a consolidated government, to allow the taxes to be collected, but the taxes would only be spent in the county that's providing the services, so you're not shifting money into another county. We didn't get there, but surprisingly enough, the language that would allow 2 counties to move forward survived. And that's an important fact, because when you start reading through the legislation, they introduced something that did not exist before. And that is a capability for there to be a cross-county, cross-jurisdictional community improvement district that could levy this kind of tax. So when you go there, then you start realizing that, well, if you can do that under this language, and this is a special service tax district, that tax district, nowhere does it say it has to be an entire county. So you could take a small piece of a county, ask them to run a referendum to levy a small amount of tax, and bingo, you perhaps have met the test. But we're going to continue moving forward to try to get the precise language. It has been endorsed Curtis and I were told outside of one of the conference room elevator in the CLOB, unsolicited, that by Speaker Pro Tem, we're working on your language, we're trying to get it in here. But I digressed. These were the issues that were the stumbling blocks. Cobb County didn't want anybody telling Cobb County how they were going to configure a transportation district. That had to be resolved. This legislation creates a Cobb County District Commission that will decide what that transit will be. Gwinnett, Marta County, that has already authorized MARTA, but did not authorize the tax years ago, didn't want to be forced into a situation of having to do the transit T-Splost, but wanted to have an opportunity to run the MARTA vote, which if they do by the end of the year, then they can be home free and providing whatever service that they want to provide. Funding. The House version wanted to levy a 50-cent fee on Uber, Lyft, and other on-demand services around the state. So if you took an Uber here, you pay an additional 50 cents, and that money would stay in this community. There was also a sales tax that was going to be levied at the Atlanta airport. Well, as we moved through, and the final item, and one which almost brought the House of Cards down, was trying to define who and how was going to control the ATL. Was the ATL going to be just a subset of Greta? Well, at the end of the day, no. The ATL became Greta, and that is how they decided to move that forward. So, we are on the 38th day. The budget is passed. The conferees are named for the legislation. Oh, and by the way, as a little bit of sweetening the pot to get the legislation done, the governor at the last minute threw in $100 million in funds for transit. It's bonds. It's 10-year bonds. We don't know how it's going to be used. Neither does CERTA, whose budget it is in. So I say let's stay tuned for that and understand where that money is going to go. Budget was passed. Conferees come together, craft a bill. They address Gwinnett's concern, they address Cobb's concern. They have a structure that they think can work, but there are more questions than there are answers. There is a structure for how you move forward with counties that are in the non-attainment area. The legislation is totally silent on how you move forward with counties that are not in the non-attainment area. We were told you don't have to go to the ATL to get authorized, but there's nothing in the bill that says that. So we're curious about where that's going to go. Oh, and the Uber, Lyft tax, and the Atlanta airport tax disappeared. Ergo, there's no money in the budget for this. So the effective date, which normally would be signature of the government for the 1st of July, is now January 1, 2019, and the members of the new ATL board will not be appointed until late December, and we're anticipating that there will be money put in the supplemental budget to get them up and running so that they can begin to assemble staff and flesh this program out. There will be changes in this legislation when we come together in January, specifically to flesh out what the single county language is going to be. And you may or may not pick up, but in these amendatory notes, a question was asked on the Senate bill: how could a non-attainment county adjacent to an attainment county in metro area participate in this? And they didn't have an answer. Well, our language would solve that problem. So we've got a good prognosis of getting this done moving forward. The Transit Funding and Governance Committee is going to be critical moving forward. Of course, Curtis Culver sits on that body, and they've got the governance part of the equation done. Now the focus is to be on the funding. because bond money is not going to work long-term, and giving all of us the capability to raise our own taxes is really not the kind of funding that we had in mind for a long-term program. So there's a lot of work to be done on this, a lot of heavy lifting, but I have to tell you, in the past 3 years, we have come a world away from where transit was something that nobody wanted to talk about, to this year where transit was one of the pieces of legislation that really drove this legislative session. I'll be quiet now and be happy to answer any of your questions.
All right. Mr. Jones, you want to start?
Go ahead, you
All right, Bill.
This all makes my head hurt, Mike.
It does.
So just
I join you.
just to be clear then, currently, Chatham County could do a T-spot, single county T-spot.
Yes.
Or for a transit cost, we could combine with 1 square inch of Effingham County and do a transit spot.
That is my interpretation. Now, one item that I left out, and I apologize because this thing is quite complex. Up until this point, you could only do a total of 1 cent transportation-related special purpose local option sales tax. This legislation allows a transit-only 1% local option sales tax, notwithstanding what anybody else is doing on the T-SPLOST side, whether it's regional or single county.
Is there still an option for some kind of hybrid?
There would be, but they would move individually. And the reason for that is the T-SPLOST does not allow expenditure for M&O, where the transit tax does allow the expenditure of M&O. And that's one of the biggest changes that we were able to succeed with on this. Last year, the Ways and Means Committee was precise, saying, no, we're not going to give transit the opportunity to raise a sales tax to be used for maintenance and operations. And our argument was we can only spend so much capital money. We have to be able to operate it. And their refrain was, that's your problem.
The T-spot would still also just be the 5-6 year.
Right. Well, no. Actually, the single county T-SPLOST can be up to 20 years now.
Yeah.
Generally, they're 5 years.
As far as the ATL is concerned, I'm not trying to be funny, but how much influence will they have over MARTA? Because I'm confused on that point.
They will have no influence over MARTA. MARTA will stay MARTA. MARTA is constitutionally created and is protected. The change that you will see over time in MARTA is that part of the ATL is a marketing concept. So that if you get off a plane in Hartsfield-Jackson at the ATL, you go out to the curb and you hop on a bus or you go and get on MARTA, it will now be branded the ATL operated by MARTA. You go into downtown Atlanta, you hop off and you get on a Greta bus, it'll be branded the ATL operated by Greta or operated by CCT or operated by Gwinnett Transit. So it is part administrative, it is part marketing.
All right. Are there any other questions for Mike? There being none, Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We certainly do appreciate your report.
Thank
We
you,
appreciate
Mike.
all that you did for us.
Thank you, and I
during the
appreciate
last
the
session.
opportunity to do so, and I appreciate the opportunity for Curtis to come up and work closely with me on this. This was a heavy lift with a bunch of us pushing in the same day, including the 13-member lobbying team for MARTA.
We're glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the Executive Director's report. Mr. Culver.
The executive director's report is in your packet, and I'll entertain any questions you might have.
Are there any highlights or?
Because you're not
Look at. Ridership's down, productivity is down because of that. Complaints are better in paratransit, and productivity, most importantly in paratransit, productivity is up, which is the main driver of saving the county the money, so that's going up.
All right.
I'm trying to get to it. It won't let me click on it over here.
Are there any comments or questions for the Executive Director's report?
No, I'm good.
Okay, there being none, we'll move on to the unit updates. Service delivery update. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, or it's still good morning. Let's see, on your service delivery update is in your board packet. A couple things I'd like to highlight is that Curtis just mentioned that the productivity on paratransit is up 0.3% for March. Also, the ridership in the ferry operations is up 30%, and that's with actually a 2% decrease in hours. The on-time performance in fixed route and paratransit is down slightly. However, I'd like to point out the fact that our preventable accidents for both fixed and paratransit is still trending downward. And I think I'd like to point out that's a testament to some of these people here in the room, the frontline operators, and their safety mindset as they're out there servicing the public. So at this time, I'd like to answer any questions that you might have.
Have we done anything yet toward trying to shift some paratransit to fixed route? If we implement that,
As we get all of our backline paratransit folks trained, we're going to institute the travel training program. So once we get the travel training program up and going, that's when we'll start transitioning people over to the fixed route side. We've gone to Celebrate Abilities. They had an event just recently, a couple Saturdays ago, which we attended, and we did a little presentation on that very same subject. We also have people currently right now at NTI training, paratransit management training. So it's all coming together for us.
what kind of timeline would you expect to actually see some transition of ridership?
End of June, July. Once we get the travel training program up and running, I think within the next couple months we should be able to see some kind of a transition.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
I'm trying to find the reports, man. I gotta scroll
Well,
each sheet to find the report.
While he's doing that, Mike, am I reading these numbers right, that compared to last year, we have over 500 additional riders, paratransit riders in March?
Yes.
And for the year, we're at 3,000?
That's correct.
That's a substantial increase.
It is, and that's a national trend, as Grant was mentioning earlier. As fixed route ridership is trending downwards nationally, paratransit is trending up. Has a lot to do with
Americans all being overweight and getting older.
Well, and people are living longer, and you know the baby boomers are starting to retire, and that's all part of it.
And moving here.
Yes.
Yes.
And using paratransit.
I'm a senior, overweight, and a baby boomer, and I'm not using paratransit, just for the record.
I'm gonna draw a personal bus.
We haven't had a report in a while, and I'm just not seeing it. I want to echo my sentiments from last year. I still want to see more projects. We have too many projects that CAT needs to be working on in our whole system. We have too many projects, and I like to see, like I said before, projects with objectives and points of how we obtain those objectives. Even if we don't have a report, or we're not an open report in the meeting, we still be able to see it.
And the status update.
And the status update on those reports. I mean, bench repair and refurb downtown is very vague, because downtown is very big, and there are a lot of benches that are not, getting the capture of showing progress. You say bench repair, what benches are being repaired? Or you say refurb downtown, what's being refurbished downtown?
And where?
We could certainly elaborate a little bit more on that, Steve.
When you say landscape replace, ITC, what does that entail? That's the things I like to see. Everybody else may not like to see it, but I know I requested it. Those are the things I like to see.
We
That's
just got
showing
bids
progress.
on the landscape here at ITC. Fixing to award the PO, and then all the landscape here at ITC will be replaced. Working on the benches and the shelters on Pennsylvania Avenue. They're sanding them down, painting them. They've completed 2 of them so far. They're working on the rest of them. And we got the wooden benches downtown area that they are pulling up the old wood, replacing it, sanding and painting the benches.
And I appreciate all that, but unfortunately I'm a visual learner. If y'all understand what I'm saying, I'm a visual learner. Give me a before and after picture. Let me see these. let me see that these projects are being done. That way we're not just saying these are the things we're doing, because that's part of that transparency piece. We're showing we're trying to upgrade our systems, because anybody can say refurbishing downtown and doing that stuff here. I like to see those things, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael?
No, I actually don't have anything left.
It was my turn a long time ago. That was a long time.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
Wait, I do have one.
All right. Well,
Michael has one.
I'm sorry.
We were gonna bring up the comment by Pam from yesterday.
Yes. One of the members of our focus group, she mentioned that she was almost accosted here at the ITC last Wednesday, I believe, about 5 p.m. as she was waiting for the bus. She had a man come up to her and started talking to her, asking her questions personal questions that he had no business asking her. And as she became irritated, she got louder and louder, and eventually this person reached over to touch her. And at that point, she yelled, "Don't touch me, don't ever touch me." And she said she felt threatened. The only thing that really gave her a little comfort, there was a young man sitting not too far away, a few feet away, that she felt could have stepped in and helped her. But she had mentioned the fact that she didn't see, that she thought we needed some kind of armed security at the ITC was her comment. That's the comment that she made.
That would be part of the police that we're addressing, right?
Correct.
At some point we're on track to be doing that.
Yes.
And there evidently was a security guard somewhere on the premises, but not out where the incident occurred.
All right, any other questions? All right, then why don't we move on to the next report, the system development update. Ms. Harris-Moore.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to give you a heads up before I share some highlights in our board report. One of those, the heads up is basically yesterday our marketing manager, Shalonda Landry, and our outreach manager, Valerie Ragsdale, they had a meeting with Chatham County Savannah School System about a potential partnership. And so I understand that there were some conversations with the school system several years ago, and then they held back and didn't pursue what their plans were. But they recently reached out to us, and so we have started those conversations again. And so we'll keep you updated if that progresses. But I wanted to mention that because you all are out in the community and you might hear that, and so I just wanted you to know that we've started conversations with them again on a potential partnership. In our report, within the planning department, I would like to mention that we have recently filled a vacancy. We have hired a transportation supervisor by the name of Joyce Eckford as our new service planner and scheduler. She will begin her new duties with us on May 1st. And we're very excited that Joyce will be joining us. We hear that she is a very sharp individual, and we're looking forward to her being part of our team.
Where is she joining us from?
She was what we would call a road supervisor, operations, so it's an internal promotion.
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you.
She's been with us for 15 years.
She's been with us for 15 years? Yes, so she's a veteran. Excellent. Yeah, so I know Wendy is sad to lose her, but we're delighted that she's going to be joining our team. Other highlights that I'd like to mention to you all is just recently we participated in 2 community events. On Saturday, we had a wonderful booth at the Earth Day Festival. We had staff members from both customer service as well as from system development working that booth. We got great comments from the general public who stopped by our booth, some positive, some not so positive, but we've shared all of those comments with the administrative staff so that we can all work on continuous improvement. We also participated in a Living Independence for Everyone celebration in April, and so we're trying to make a concerted effort to get out in the community, to talk to people so that we can work to improve our services. Also in the report on page 3 under marketing and communications, I'd like to share with you all schematic drawings of the new paratransit vans and 35-foot buses that will be hopefully arriving late May. We're hearing from our maintenance director. And so Shalonda and our contractor worked on these schematic drawings. They got feedback from administrators in the agency as well as from our bus operators. And so we are now working with our maintenance department to make sure those applications will be applied to those new buses as they come in. And we'll also be planning a special event surrounding those buses. And so we'll keep you posted as we develop plans for that. And 2 other items that I'd love to mention to you regarding the report is that for the month of March, we sent out a total of 3 press releases trying to be more active, more proactive with the media. 2 of those were to do with the St. Patrick's Day shuttles, and we included some ridership stats regarding those shuttles. And then one also included the advertising policy change that you all approved last month. We received national publicity regarding that change in policy in one of our trade publications, Mass Transit Magazine, and we included some information in the packet about that as well. And then our usual charts are in there regarding ridership, and if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Yes, sir.
Just not a question so much as an encouragement. When we get these new vehicles, we need to make a huge splash with
We
that.
do.
Whatever kind of event we can do that will get as much attention as possible.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
I just have one comment. I was really happy to see the tent at the Earth Day celebration.
Thank you.
So that was a really important place for us to be, and we were very centrally located and right in the midst of it all. And so thank you for making sure that we were there.
Thank you.
Are there any events we're looking forward to seeing Cat at this month?
Not to my knowledge, but if you all have ideas, you know, I'm new to Savannah and I'm trying to get my feel of the community, so please shoot me an email. And Valerie and I will look at it and see if that's possible, because I do believe we need to be out there more in the community.
All right. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much for that report.
Thank you.
All right, we'll now go to the financial update. Ms. Harrison.
So the financial update is included in your packet. Month to date and year to date, we're still better than budget. Month to date by about 100,000. Year to date by a little over $1 million. We are set to achieve the targets we talked about earlier in the first reading of the budget, and we will surely answer any questions you may have.
Now, the $1 million that you say that we are, the extra.
Year to
The
date.
money, yes, yes. Now, that is what we're going to use to retire that $1 million.
It's actually revenues over expenditures.
Okay.
And it's a factor of service levels and wages more than it is associated with debt retirement.
Okay.
We've already retired debt for this year in January.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions for Ms. Harrison?
How much of that do you expect to carry forward into the next fiscal year as a
So the 1.1 year-to-date positive bottom line right now is a financial reporting line. That's not cash. So I expect it to grow over the next 3 months. And so we will have a net increase in assets from the operating fund of about 1.2 to 1.6, all things staying the same. And cash-wise, we will be, for the first time, able to pay the line of credit down to 0. So it won't show on our balance sheet in our audited financials. And we will start the year not behind in our payables. For last year, we were a couple million behind. And we will have cash in the bank to carry us through August, September, and October, which are the low transit tax months for cash. So it's financial reporting and then also cash. But by June, with the last of our tax receipts, we should be set for an easier cash flow year.
All right. Thank you. Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you for that report. I guess the next item on the agenda is, so we have a policy workshop scheduled?
Yes.
Okay.
8:15, just a reminder to the board.
And that starts at,
10:30.
and then I see the other item on old business is, health insurance renewal. Do we need?
Yes, we discussed this, the chairman discussed this last month, there'll be a special call board meeting on June 7th to renew the health insurance.
All right, is there anything else before we adjourn? Yes, sir.
The 2 points that I specified in my email, are we gonna talk about those 2 points?
And those two being,
The 2 points being the credit card, and the other point being Terry as far as influence within the board structure.
I would ask that you allow that to be deferred to the policy workshop.
The only reason why I don't mind deferring to the policy workshop, my only problem about deferring them to the policy workshop is every time we defer them to the policy workshop, it never makes its way back to the
Okay.
board meeting.
All right.
So this is a board meeting, and I said this about 6 months ago. From now on, if I need to address anything, we're gonna talk about it in the board meeting,
Okay.
and not in policy workshop, because it was discussed in the budget meeting. So it was discussed in that workshop, and I didn't want to be seen as giving unilateral decisions, so therefore I want to make sure it was addressed upon the board members in public session.
Okay. But so why don't we discuss it at the policy workshop, and then we'll bring it back at the following board meeting. And I will do my best to make sure that occurs.
I'll give you that courtesy this time, but if it's not discussed, then it's going to be even worse of a conversation in May. So I really want us to make sure we discuss it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your
It
candor.
just gives me more time to put latitude to the information I just received.
I hear you.
That's fine.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Do I hear a motion we adjourn?
Second, first, so move.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your patience with your